So certainly coming off a improved performance, we want to build on that against a Georgia Tech team going on the road for a second week in a row. We certainly learned a lot about the procedures necessary to have an effective road game during this pandemic. So feel a lot more comfortable, certainly, being able to take our team on the road after going through it last week at Pittsburgh. The opponent itself, Coach Collins has done a great job of transforming a triple option team into a pro style offense, and in a very short period of time. He's got some of the bigger offensive linemen that we've seen, and we thought we've had big offensive linemen, but these are so different than what Georgia Tech obviously has had in their program. And now he's got some transfers from the SEC, some big physical offensive linemen. He's got a young freshman who's going to be an incredible talent at tackle. So he's recruited very, very well and making this transition to a pro-style spread offense. Led by two outstanding young players that are as good as any young players in the country and in the ACC. Sims at quarterback, Jeff Sims, is a talent. He's got arm talent. He's got the ability to extend plays, and he's very dangerous with the football in his hand. And when you talk about the talented backs in this league, and there are many, including, Kyron Williams here, Jahmyr Gibbs is an explosive back. He's somebody that you need to know where he is, and really impressed with him. Those two in particular are problems. Big offensive line, those two guys in particular, and they've had many games where they've put points on the board. They've got two great wins against Florida State and Louisville, and a very capable wide receiver core, and can make plays on the perimeter. So, Brown is a guy that can certainly make plays after the catch. They've got depth there as well at the wide receiver position. So again, our defense will have to do a great job against a very talented combination at quarterback, at running back, big physical offensive line, capable wide receivers that can make plays down the field. So, and a team that certainly is coming home and is an up and coming, and a team that has got two quality wins against Florida State and Louisville. On defense, a 4-2-5 defense, and playing a lot of players on defense, rotating in, keeping guys fresh, doing a really good job there, and Coach knows what he's doing there on the defensive side of the ball. Curry is an outstanding player, 6. He's all over the field. One of their top players, plays with great instincts. Really like the way he plays. He's all over the place. Defensively, two big physical safeties, great size, and both corners are really instinctive. I like their size. I like their savvy. Swilling, obviously, he's got great pedigree and coming from a former All-American. His dad played there and in the NFL. So two really good corners there. Two physical safeties. I mentioned Curry, and then, playing a lot of players on the defensive front. So going on the road again, back-to-back weeks, an explosive offensive opportunities with the players that I've just mentioned, in Sims and Gibbs. Should be a great football game, and one that we need to continue to ascend and play at the level that we played at last week against Pittsburgh. So with that, we'll open up to questions.
All right, our first question will be from Tim Priester.
Brian, you're in the top 10 in the country in time of possession, which is probably something you wouldn't have imagined a few years ago. But you've steered away from tempo a little bit. I wondered the reasons behind that. Tommy Rees being a first-year coordinator, having an offensive line you want to just run behind. You have a third down defense that gets off the field quickly. Just some of the reasons behind it. And do you anticipate returning to more tempo in the future?
Yeah, we had a list of about what we call snake plays or tempo plays. We had 24 of them last year. We pared that down considerably because we're really going to be focusing a lot more on multiple formations. And when you get into multiple formations in motion, it's hard to play fast, quite frankly. So in playing fast, you have to be in a much more static alignment, lining up and playing fast. We're moving our tight ends around. We want to get into leverage positions with our tight ends. And so when we made the decision that we were going to be utilizing multiple tight ends within our formation, it's important that you leverage the defense with those tight ends. Consequently, you're not going to be in as many as those hurry-up situations or tempo situations as you mentioned.
We'll go next to John Finneran.
Hi, Brian. I was wondering, how difficult has it been to establish the receiving game where Ian had virtually no time with his receivers during the shutdown until preseason started? And then you had those injuries to Austin Skoranek, Keys, and now Lindsey. And how important was it for you to make strides last Saturday, especially with your tight end group? And if you could talk a little bit about the progress that Mayer has made this season.
Well, all those are true. I'm not here to make apologies, or there are no excuses. You got to be ready to play with what you have. And the fact of the matter is no one really cares. And so we weren't going to sit up here and complain about what our situation was. We were going to deal with the situation that was at hand. But a lot of them were because of injuries and not having the continuity. But everybody has problems, and you deal with it and you work through it. We're gaining some continuity, and I had said it many times, is that I believed in this group when we got continuity within the offensive structure, in particular the passing game, it would look better and it would get better, and Ian would feel a lot more confident in getting the ball out on time. And some of that timing element where many people comment on the ball not coming out on time is working with those guys so you can throw it before they get out of their break and do those kinds of things. And we're getting there and we're getting better. We have another level that we need to get to, and we hope to continue to work on that in practice. So when we get to Georgia Tech this weekend, that we see another level that we get to. We're building a really good confidence with Mayer and certainly Trumbull, because they've been in the lineup pretty consistently for us. And so I think Ian feels really confident that he knows where those guys are going to be. That has been singularly one of the areas that we built that rapport and we built that confidence level. And I think you can start to see that playing itself out. We need to do more of that at the wide receiver position.
We'll go next to Austin Huff.
Brian, we saw Ian and Ben Skoranek over the summer post a lot on social media. It seemed like they were hanging out, working out a lot together. The production that they had on Saturday, did you kind of expect that at the beginning of the season? Obviously, the injuries hurt Ben, obviously. But did you kind of see this as being the potential for them, and what is their ceiling as a duo?
Yeah, we felt like that was where we were going to get that connection. We weren't sure whether he was going to be at the X position or the W position, to start the season, because we weren't really clear, where we were going to go when we lost Kevin Austin early on. So remember now, we lost Kevin Austin before our first practice. We had Kevin Austin penciled in at one of those positions. So, we had to kind of shift in midstream. So a lot of this is kind of what was presented to me as a question earlier by Tim Priester, is that changing, just before we got into camp when we lost Kevin Austin, we then had to move Ben out to the X. We had him, really thinking that he was going to be the W and Kevin was going to be the X. We had to change that. So then we get into halfway through camp, and then Ben pulls a hamstring, and, that kind of slowed things down. And as you know, we played 2 games, and then we had to stop. So, look, at the end of the day, it's our job to build this continuity through repetition and practice, and you can't do it unless those guys are out on the field. They're out on the field. Ben is practicing at full go. We expect and we hope that we continue to build that relationship with those two guys.
We'll go next to George Bashura.
Good afternoon, Coach.
Good afternoon.
Question for you on special teams. Jay Bromblett seems to be doing fairly well this year. He's flipping the field for you. It's easy to talk the X's and O's, but when you need that field position to pin the opponent back, he's really delivering for you. What's been the difference this year in his conditioning that he's improved to 41.5 yards per punt?
You know, another year, stronger in the weight room. I think all those things matter a lot. He's an extremely conscientious young man. He takes what he does very, very serious. And so I just think that this is the maturation of a guy playing in his second year and being a lot more aware of the routines that go along with being a full-time punter. Remember now, he was a quarterback in high school, and he did punting as kind of his second role. Now that he's fully engaged in just punting, getting into the routine, there were times last year that he did too much. Because he wasn't used to not being fully engaged in a practice setting. He was used to being the starting quarterback. So there were clearly some times where, you know, he punted his leg out, and coming into a Saturday, he was tired. So I just think the maturation, the understanding of how to prepare himself is beginning to show itself.
We'll go next to Pete Byrne.
Brian, I've got two questions for you. Last week, you spoke early in the week about wanting to see more intensity from your team and better execution. I'm curious to what extent you saw what you wanted to see last Saturday as it pertains to moving forward. And secondly, as you mentioned, Georgia Tech's offense is putting up a lot of points, more points than a lot of your opponents so far. How good of a test will this be for your defense this week, given that in the second half of the season, it seems like you're going to face a lot more offenses that score a lot more points?
Yeah, agreed. I thought we played with a lot more intensity. I thought we played with more energy, which was the challenge of our football, given to our football team. I think they met that challenge. I needed to take away some of the obstacles that might have been in front of them relative to that in terms of the way we practiced during the week. But they certainly met that and exceeded the challenge, and they need to do that consistently throughout the year. So check that box. I think when it comes to the execution, it was much better. The attention to detail, that's part of the way they prepared, and I think what they brought is both of those together, the attention to detail with the intensity, and we saw a higher level of play and compete level on Saturday. As it relates to the offense that we're playing, there's no doubt that this is a really good offense, one that can be extremely explosive. I mentioned the two guys in particular, the quarterback and the running back. Good scheme, solid offensive line, veteran guys up front. So, yeah, we're going to be challenged, and we're going to have some tests, obviously, these next couple of weeks with some explosive players on offense. And, you know, our defense will be certainly challenged differently than they have been the previous weeks.
Our next question is from Eric Hansen.
Hey, Brian, I got a couple things for you. The first one is I would imagine Dalen Hayes gives you all kinds of things off the field with his leadership and so forth. How do you feel like his production has been on the field to this point? Then the second thing is maybe your expectations this week from Lindsey, Keys, and Bracey.
Yeah. In terms of Dalen Hayes, I think what we've gotten that has been something that had been not as, I don't know, say a hole in his game, because that's probably not fair or not as prevalent, but his assignments in terms of execution has been really good. Very rarely are we seeing a Dalen Hayes that's not executing his assignments at the highest level. He's not a freelance player. He's not a guy that is doing his own thing. Extremely disciplined at what he's asked to do, play in and play out, and that's a great thing for a captain and a leader because he's really showing Isaiah Foskey, Ovi, how to play the position with a lot of detail. And so to get a captain that's showing the kind of responsibility both on and off the field, he's been outstanding for us, and his play has shown it. Right, there's been a huge uptick in his performance and effectiveness for us. As it relates to the players that you mentioned, we'll have Tariq back. He was cleared. And we'll get him back this week. He'll be able to weight train with us today and practice. Lawrence Keys will be back into a competitive role. I think he was more of a we didn't want to get him into too much action, although it ended up being that he got quite a few reps because we pulled a lot of those guys out. And so, and good for Lawrence. I think he felt a whole lot better, and he was excited that he got a chance to play, and now we'll get him back into the routine. Lindsey has the hamstring, and so I don't think that we're going to see him at full strength this week. We'll see how it goes, but it's a lingering hamstring that we need to get him right. He is a speed player. He's a guy that's best when he's able to go at 100%, and he's been a warrior. He's been tough and gritty, and most guys that are, quote unquote guys that have great speed, they don't handle it the way he's handled it. He's handled this injury in a manner that he's gotten out there and fought through it. We need to really think about getting him right before we get him back into a competitive situation.
We'll go next to Matt Fortuna.
Hi, Brian. As you close in on the halfway point of the season this week, what differences, if any, has there been week in and week out preparing for a conference schedule?
We're creatures of habit, so I think as coaches, the routine is very similar now that we've gotten back to a routine. The opponents kind of blend in a little bit when it comes to the preparation. But there is a little bit of a loss when you don't see USC or Stanford on your schedule, or Michigan or a Big Ten school. But you don't think too much about it. I mean, I think it lasts probably one coffee or one slice of pizza, then you're back to work. But again, I think you're a lot more familiar with the opponents because you have a bank of film. Where sometimes as we're preparing, we're playing first-time opponents. Sometimes we don't have a great understanding of the opponent we're playing. This is a lot easier in terms of our research in that respect.
We'll go next to Patrick Engel.
Hey, Brian, going off Saturday a little bit, but also I think you mentioned in the opening statement, in your mind, just in practice this week and on Saturday when you take the field, what does continue to ascend look like for you from what you want to see?
Yeah. So first of all, it starts with, our process of understanding, what is our total preparation. And for our guys, they've been incredible. Their will to prepare has been outstanding. And so it can't change, right? We can't all of a sudden say, let's get to Saturday. So embracing our process and going out there on Tuesday and really having a great attitude and going through the week and being detailed about our preparation. If we start there and continue to do the things that we've done week in and week out for the last 3.5 years, that sets us up for us to go and look at the way we played against Pittsburgh with that great energy, that mindset that I want to be a playmaker. So what we want is to add more playmaker mentality to our entire team. offense, defense, and special teams. And then, continue to play fearless. And when we say fearless, trusting that all the work that you put in during the week is going to carry you. Let it go. Play fast, play free. So we'll continue to talk about those things during the week.
We'll continue with Pete Sampson.
Brian, I want to follow up on you said you removed some obstacles from the defense in practice last week, what that meant. And then also Ben Skoranek, I don't know, were you serious about taking a graduate transfer receiver regardless? And then also, does it remind you of anyone you've coached before? When I asked Ian Book about that in the summer, he's like, hey, we really haven't had anybody like him here. He's sort of a mix of a bunch of guys. So a few questions there.
Obstacles. Thought that, the workload might have been a little bit too much, trying to make up for lost work. We put maybe too much work on our defense in terms of contact, in terms of, we did a lot of 11-on-11 situations where maybe when we got to Saturday, we didn't have the energy necessary, and you saw a different defense play with flying to the football. I mean, we had hats all over the football, and so I removed some of those obstacles during the week to get that back on Saturday. I think when we talk about recruiting, it was clear that we were looking for a veteran presence, somebody that had played at a high level and competed at a high level. If somebody fit the profile that we were looking for, we were in the market for that, in a sense, because we knew we were losing a lot of catches. We were losing a lot of guys that had played a lot of football, and that we weren't returning a lot of guys. Ian needed somebody that played a lot of football, and Ben fit that profile. In terms of who he reminds me of, he's got a little bit of Boykin in him, in a sense that he's rangy, will go up and go and get the football, and surprisingly has more speed than you think. But because by the time you look, he's past his defender. We missed him on a couple of posts where he beat the corner, and both those corners are pretty darn good. So I'd say he's probably the closest comparison to a Miles Boykin.
We'll go next to Angelo DiCarlo. And Angelo, I believe you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, Angelo.
Okay, thanks. Coach, Saturday you said you guys were playing, you needed to play at a championship level. You kind of hinted at being ready for Clemson, but you didn't use their name. I'm curious, with your team at all, have you specifically talked about Clemson and said their name to them to say, hey, if we want to beat these guys November 7th, we have to play at this championship level?
No, I mean, I think it was implicit that our guys know who's on the schedule and what we have to do, to win a championship. So here's what I said exactly. The acronym WIN is what's important now, but it also means what's important next. And certainly we're going to prepare the right way for Georgia Tech, and that's what's important now. But the way you play and how you play sets you up for what's next. And what's next is what you need to do to win a championship and who you have to play down the road. So that was implicit in that conversation without having to say, hey, guys, in a couple of weeks, we're playing Clemson. Wink, wink, wink. So we didn't need to do that. Our guys are pretty smart. We've got a schedule up in our team room where they look at it every day. So I didn't feel like I needed to do that. What I needed to tell them is that just focusing on winning is not enough. It's the way you play the game and the way you compete and at what level you compete at is what translates down the road. And that was really the gist of the conversation.
We'll go next to Brian Driscoll.
Hey, Coach, I just have a quick question for you about your run defense. When you go back to last year, I think through the first 7 games of the year, you guys were giving up about 173 rushing yards a game. And your last 10 games against non-option teams, you're at 95.6. That was a pretty dramatic turnaround. What can you attribute to just the vast improvement and really just dominant run defense play in the last 10 games?
Well, I mean, I'd have to look at the schedule in terms of who we were playing, to compare apples to apples. Certainly, when you look at it, we return, some really good players on the defensive side of the ball. The middle of your defense, with your middle linebacker, your defensive tackles, and your safeties really stays consistent. It's hard to get outside with Jeremiah Owusu. So your core is got another year in this system. So your expectation should be such that you're going to be looking at an improved run defense. And again, I'd have to really look at the opponents in terms of their commitment to the run. And snaps, right? We've kept the snaps down quite a bit in terms of the way we've ball controlled. So, we're certainly another year into it. We're certainly, really strong up the middle of our defense. We've kept the snaps down. I'd have to look at like opponents to give you a really good assessment of that. But that, to me, is kind of what jumps out at me in terms of being able to answer that question right now.
We'll go next to Lou Samoji.
Good afternoon, Coach. Just following up on Tim's original question. Your last year at Cincinnati, you were dead last in the country in time of possession and still finished 12-0. Now, you said part of that is at a place like Cincinnati, you had to put people in the stands and play up tempo and have that exciting brand to have people in attendance. If you had your druthers, would you rather go back to that, or do you think Notre Dame's model is built for what you have right now?
Yeah, this is strictly about personnel and making sure that you are playing the kind of football that is geared toward the strengths of your offense. And we've said from day one that this should be centered around the offensive line and the tight ends, which is the strength. We didn't return a veteran group of wide receivers. If I had 4 wide receivers, if I had Will Fuller and I had Chase Claypool and Miles Boykin and T.J. Jones or whoever, and I'm sure I'm missing Michael Floyd and whoever, we might be in 4 wide receivers and throwing it. So I've always believed that a balanced offense is that you are equally good at running it as you are throwing it, and then you support it by player over play. And this year, it's about the players that is dictating the offense, not the particular play. So that's why we look the way we look.
And we'll wrap it up this afternoon with Tyler James.
Brian, I wanted to ask about a couple of the linebackers. Isaiah Pryor has moved to Rover. Certainly you don't, and Jack Kaiser has been working behind Jeremiah. You don't want to take Jeremiah off the field much.
Right, good idea.
How Pryor has progressed at Rover, and how he sort of handled that, and also what he's giving you guys on special teams. And then Bo Bauer getting an interception against Pittsburgh. Would you have imagined he'd be the first linebacker to get an interception for you guys this season?
Let's talk about Pryor. Really impressed with his performance. He's long, he's sudden. And part of this process, and we've talked about Isaiah a little bit, is finding a niche and a place for him. Taking Jeremiah off the field is not really an option. It was in this instance because we were up. But we got a glimpse at what he can do. So now that gets you starting to think as, okay, where can he maybe fit situationally for us to maybe maximize what he has for us even this year? So that opened up a nice segue into conversations with our defensive staff as to maybe we can find a role even right now for Isaiah that is more expansive than what he has. Bo Bauer being the first guy that gets an interception. You know, he's in so much of our dime package. You know, he's you know what our dime looks like. I mean, he's usually up in a mug position. He's usually considered one of our top blitzers. But he's extremely athletic, and he has improved exponentially in terms of finding the field, finding the dig route. We've talked about that, Bo and I, myself, about when he comes out, finding the deep routes, and it was just great to see him. If you saw the reaction of our defense on that interception, it was amazing. I mean, it was. It goes up there with Sebo, pointing to the first down when he was picked up by the defense. Those two sites shows you so much about the energy and the enthusiasm the guys played with.
All right, that's all we have. Thank you very much, Coach.
All right, thank you.